Hello and welcome to When Football Began Again, the podcast that takes a nostalgic look at the Premier League era. Today's show is a best bits compilation, some of my favourite guests and moments from Series 1 of the show. Series 2 will be launching very, very soon, and I have some amazing guests lined up for you. But in the meantime, these best bits compilations are just to whet your appetite and maybe catch up on the bits you've forgotten about or episodes you may have missed in Series 1. On today's show, former Premier League star Ashley Ward recalls his move to Derby County and also relives Paulo Wanchope's iconic goal at Old Trafford. Charity founder Charlie Edinburgh remembers the final ever game at the old White Hart Lane stadium and what it meant to his late father, Justin. Tony Jameson and Phil Walker relive two of 95-96's most memorable moments, Aston Villa's 3-1 win on opening day against Manchester United and Kevin Keegan's Monday night meltdown. Comedian and actual international footballer Josh Pugh recalls playing in the World Cup semi-finals at Futsal against Russia. Poet and broadcaster Ian McMillan recalls the excitement when Barnsley were promoted to the Premiership. And we end with Chris Taylor and Nathan Fogg having a Blackpool-themed Play Your Apps Right round. And that is a very impressive performance, let me tell you. I would be impressed if anyone at home matches the winner of that. So here we go then, part 4 of the best bits. And as ever, please share the show, subscribe, like, leave a review if you enjoy what you hear. I'll be back very soon with Season 2. In the meantime, enjoy this final slice of Season 1 Best Bits. Then comes a chance to join promotion chasing Derby, who signed you in March 1996 for £1 million. A return to the Premier League with them follows soon after. Against the backdrop of the Premiership, there's something distinctly traditional, I think, about that derby. They're still at baseball ground under Jim Smith. It seemed like a very happy spell in your career again. I know you're very, very popular with the Derby fans as well. What was it like that spell at Derby?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great spell actually. Talking about getting off to a flying start with, when I signed for Norwich, it's kind of a bit the opposite at Derby. I left Norwich midweek again, sort of Wednesday, Thursday. And the first game back was on the Saturday at Carrow Road against Norwich. Got through 1-on-1 with the keeper, missed a great chance, and made it a more difficult start than it needed to be, really. Because had I scored that, it would have settled the nerves a lot quicker than they did. So, yeah, the back end of that season wasn't that easy. It was very tight to go up, and I didn't play as big a part in that as I would like to have done, really. But when we got into the Premier League, it was great times in general because we were moving to the new stadium as well. So the old baseball ground for that first year in the Premiership was priceless, really, and I think a big factor in Derby staying up. So many of the pitch was awful. The crowd were right on top of the pitch. But the pitch itself was awful. I think, I can remember Chelsea coming there actually, and we had the predicted team that they were going to play, and they walked out on the pitch and they're all scratching their heads and shaking their heads. And next thing you know, the team came out and Zola wasn't playing, and Vialli, I don't think was, but they left the ball players out, and I think that definitely went in Derby's favour. And then the year after, we moved to the state-of-the-art Pride Park at the time, and I was quite lucky, really. I scored the last Derby goal at the baseball ground and the first Derby goal at the new ground, although that got cancelled out when the floodlights went out.
Of course.
Yeah, so it actually wasn't the first goal in the new ground because the game got abandoned when we were winning 1-0 against Wimbledon. But yeah, it's a great time. It's great to be involved in that move to the new stadium and that whole promotion to the Premier League and staying in there. Great set of fans and a big club.
Yeah, absolutely. And the goal at Old Trafford, perhaps it's fair to say that that game is remembered for a different goal. Your teammate Paulo Wanchope's famous goal, it's perhaps not quite as graceful as Maradona's against England in '86, but it's reminiscent. He basically just goes like a knife through butter through the entire Man United team. The one thing I did notice on that, you're on his left side all that way. So how many times are you shouting pass, pass, pass when you're effectively in a better position? Or do you claim the indirect assist for just creating the space that he went on to run into?
I think it was all about the movement off the ball, really, wasn't it? From the taking players away and making him think he's going to pass it. No, I mean, it was just, I kept thinking he's going to pass it now. He's going to pass it now. And I honestly think United defenders were thinking the same. Ironically, him and another player, two lads from Costa Rica came the week before, played in training. I don't think he had any boots or anything. He got him boots and he played in training that week. And there was almost a riot, the team, what the lads are like when they get together. Jim Smith said, "Oh, well, Paulo's playing up front." We're like, the guy's just come from Costa Rica. Do you know what I mean? He's barely played any level of football whatsoever. We were supposed to go to Old Trafford with effectively like a trialist, and they were like, the lads were going crazy, really. And of course, he goes and scores one of the best goals, everybody's still talking about it now. It's just incredible. Like I say, a knife through butter. That was the way to settle yourself in.
Yeah, what a goal. And I mean, what is going through your head at that time? Because are you thinking, I mean, I don't think I'd made the connection actually that he'd so recently joined the club as well. So, this is your new teammate. Is it unforgivable that a teammate isn't going to pass you until they put the ball in the back of the net and then all's forgiven?
Yeah, you're about to be annoyed, aren't you? You're about to dish out a bit of a bollocking, and then bang, it's in the back of the net, and you're like, "Well, that was good." What you didn't give it me? Yeah, I mean, he kind of had that crazy unpredictability where I don't think at times he knew what he was doing, but he obviously did, but he kind of like, it just happened naturally. He didn't think about it, he'd just dribble and he'd half overrun the ball to the defender. I think they can nick it, but he had these very sort of long, nimble legs that could just tap it past them. And he was a real handful. Big guy, quick. So yeah, he turned out to have a great career, didn't he? And I think we could all see that from his first introduction.
The first match to take to your deserted island is going to be a Premier League game involving Spurs. Which match would you take with you?
So I had to think long and hard. Obviously, I think what we'll tend to find throughout this is much like you, Cole, I am a Spurs fan. And obviously, Dad played for the club for a number of years. So a lot of these games that we're going to speak about, I did have him at the forefront of it. The game that I've gone for, Premier League game featuring Tottenham, is the final game at White Hart Lane against Manchester United. 2-1 victory. Victor Wanyama and Harry Kane getting the goals. Again, a place that holds so many memories for me and my family growing up. Special place full of unbelievable people. I mean, the game has obviously gone on now, and I remember, from being a 2-year-old, 3-year-old running around the creche in the players' lounge and the staff that used to sort of take care of us. I'll give him a mention, Nick, who's he's actually head of security now. He does the tunnel security at Leyton Orient. Still a guy that we keep in contact with as a family, and that just goes to show that the connection and the bond that football has. He's seen me as a nipper right up to a 30-year-old man now, and we still speak about the special times and memories. But yeah, that final game at White Hart Lane, as I say, it's a special place. It was a great result. I think we had already secured our Champions League position for that season. But to go out on such a high there against, Man United, a team that have done so much for the Premier League, and, they sort of run riot for a whole load of time. So to beat a big club like Man United on the last game at that stadium, and then obviously the icing on top of the cake was there was a fantastic ceremony after that game whereby Dad was invited back as a legend of the club alongside, I'm talking greats. My dad, I probably don't give him enough credit because he is my dad, and I just think it's normal. But when you see him on the pitch with, some real legends of the club, it sort of takes your breath away, really, and just makes you realise what a top player he was and what he'd achieved with such a fantastic club with such rich history, you know. So that was special to see him on the pitch after the game, being applauded by unbelievable supporters. And yeah, I know just how much that day meant to him, because he would have been bursting with pride, and great for him to be back and see some old and familiar faces.
Yeah, fantastic. And what a game that was. And of course, the iconic image now, I think, is the rainbow. I think of, and as well, all the legends on the pitch, as you mentioned. I think most of them under clear umbrellas, because the weather didn't quite play on that day, did it? But then the rainbow kind of broke through. And and as Spurs fans, we all have huge fond memories of White Hart Lane. But yeah, you were within the inner sanctum of it, I guess, so often as a kid growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned that Dad. I've actually got the video still on my phone now, just that he would send to me, and him on the pitch underneath one of them umbrellas, and you can hear a few of the lads going, "Oh, it's typical Tottenham. We're getting rained on our last day." But I think that's Spurs, and it's a beautiful image, as you say, of the rainbow with all of the flags waving. It's just that was the special place that it was, and only that would happen at White Hart Lane, I would imagine. But yeah, so many memories, and it's just listen. The new stadium, I've been on a number of occasions. It's absolutely breathtaking. You know, a lot of these modern stadiums, I feel, have lost that sort of, I don't know what the word is, but that sort of link between the old stadiums and the new stadiums. But the fact that we're so close to the pitch still, and listen, the club needed to propel forward. Look, the results at the moment on the pitch and the way the season's gone this year, I'm sure probably people listening to me now will probably laugh and say, well, the club hasn't really gone forward. It has, with a new training ground and an unbelievable stadium. All the foundations are there for it to really kick on. It's just, I think, a matter of time now, and things being sorted out at the top end. I think we need to have a bit of a regroup and a plan in place that's clear. And hopefully in the not too distant future, Tottenham will be back to the glory days.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. So coming back to the foundation. So the J3 Foundation has three main purposes. Let's start with the first one. You want Manchester United's campaign to win back the title that Blackburn had taken from them the previous season gets off to the worst possible start with a 3-1 defeat at Villa Park. Goals from future Red Devil Dwight York, Ian Taylor and debutant Milosevic, combining with Mark Draper, give the Villains a 3-1 win. A promising youngster called David Beckham hits a long-range reply for Fergie's men. It famously won't be the last goal he scores from outside the box on opening day, but more of that next episode. Of course, this match has now spawned the infamous "You'll win nothing with kids" line on Match of the Day from Alan Hansen. Phil, on paper, Fergie's shipped out more players than he's brought in. He's let go a lot of experience from this team. He's trusting in what we now know to be the class of 92 to win back the title. Even after this result, he doesn't flinch. Did that seem like madness to you at the time, or did you trust in his genius?
Well, I don't know about trusting in his genius. Everyone believed in him. Obviously, it was because he had this aura about him, even though it was still kind of early on in his managerial stint at Manchester United. But the buzz around, I remember the buzz as you walked into to the Theatre of Dreams at Old Trafford. At that time, it was electric. You know, that all these young guys that came through, your Giggsies and Beckham and Scholes and all these, they just seemed in tune with each other, and there was just an energy and an invincibility about them. So as far as bringing in new players at the time, I don't think we really needed them. You know, it was, people used to say, well, you know, we've got those 11 players on the pitch, and then you'd look across to the bench, you know, and the bench was just like, they would get in any first team, you know, at that time. We just had such strength in numbers.
Tony, folklore has dictated this match is best remembered, A, for Alan Hansen's comments, and B, Man United's youthful team sheet. But as a Villa fan, how is it remembered among Villa fans?
Oh, we'll also remember, let's not forget the grey kit as well. The grey kit was the debut of the infamous "You can't win in the grey kit" that came out. As a Villa fan, Villa fans still shake their heads at this match because I don't think Villa were expecting to win 3-1 at all. I mean, there was a slight like, look, I've just pulled the Villa team up actually to sort of see what we sort of put out. Like, and I guess, you know, you're saying there, Phil, you got this synergy, this youth setup that's going to come through into the first team. They've all played together for years. They know how each other works. Ferguson at that time, not just buying a player for the sake of it, going like, I'll buy someone who's better than what I've already got. Villa had players like Carl Tyler, Gareth Farrelly, Ricardo Scamacca was someone who was just popping through for Villa, and we got, oh, he sounds fancy and exotic. He was from Leicester, I think. Like, that's how fancy and exotic we got. Obviously, we had Dwight York, Bosnich in goal, but Savo was the big one. Like, Savo was the guy. This, you know, this at the time would have been classed as Yugoslavian striker turning up, very sort of like swanky. He had a bandana. So we're going, get them in the club shop. We'll sell them off. That's gonna be brilliant. And he turned up, he scored a goal. We're like, oh, this is amazing. This is like the dawn of a new age. But we didn't have the same dawn of a new age that you had. And to be fair, there was still maybe that sort of like air in a little sort of feeling in the air, because it was only a couple of years previous. Remember that you won the first ever Premier League title and Villa were second. Like, so it was still in that time of what might have been. Like, you know, we had Villa won the first title, that match at Villa Park has a completely different complexion on it. And it's only 3 years removed. But then you look now 30 years removed, and like things could have been all so different. But yeah, we enjoyed that result. But I think even then we weren't going, right, who are we playing next? Because this is not going to happen again.
They get back to winning ways against Leeds, with Fergie openly questioning why Leeds tried so hard against Manchester United. You wait and see the difference against Newcastle, he adds, while struggling to conceal a smirk. He sees his side demolish Nottingham Forest in their final home game, 5-0. Ahead of the final weekend of the season, he will now sit back and watch Newcastle attempt to overturn a 6-point and 7-goal difference advantage with their 2 games in hand. It leads to one of Monday Night Football's most iconic moments, as Keegan's men win the first of 3 games in 7 days at Ellen Road. Tony, I'll give a bit more detail of it in a moment. What do you remember about Kevin Keegan's rant?
He was, again, living in the Northeast. You could see the pressure had got to him. It wasn't getting to him. It had got to him. Fergie was sat almost like Mr. Burns, like in like an ivory tower, just excellent. Like, this is all going according to plan. And because just Ferguson was puppeteering the whole thing, and Keegan was desperate, so desperate for success. Newcastle fans, desperate for success. They'd spent all this money. They were playing expansive football. They were great to watch. They didn't know when they were going to get another chance to do this again. And I think United knew that if they didn't get it, next year they're back in that conversation again. Newcastle had never been in that conversation before. So to get to that point, it was going, we've got to get it. We've got to get it now. Like, we've not won a trophy for, I think at the time it was something like 40 years, maybe also since the Fairs Cup. Obviously that has gone on and on and on. Manchester United, of course, continued to be incredibly successful for a long period of time. And it just showed that moment of Ferguson understanding he'd been there before. He knew how to play the situation. The media, he was playing to his benefit. Keegan was usually a pretty suave character, and like he could sort of like play things off, and people liked him and they talked to him and they'd give like some little sound bites and that. But this was the moment when you just knew, like, oh, okay, are you cut out for this? When it gets right down to the nitty gritty, and again, you'll find out in international management later that maybe he doesn't like it when it gets to those moments. But Ferguson just cool as a cucumber, just goes, Leeds tried against us. Oh, they tried. Oh, they tried. They're all, let's see if they try against you, shall we? And you could just
and that's it. And Keegan cracks. I mean, as he says in this famous interview, a lot of things have been said over the last few days. Some of it is almost slanderous. We've never commented. We've just got on trying to pass the ball in training. Now, at this point, a baiting Richard Keys, I think, spots something. What do you mean by that? People having a go at you and your team? Keegan says, I think you've got to send Alex Ferguson a tape of that match, haven't you? We're playing Notts Forest on Thursday. That was fixed up 4 months ago. I mean, that sort of stuff. We're bigger than that, he says, his voice breaking slightly. When you do that with footballers like he said about Leeds, and when you do things like that about a man like Stuart Pearce, I've kept really quiet, but I'll tell you something. He went down in my estimation when he said that. We've not resorted to that, but I'll tell you, you can tell him now. He'll be watching. We're still fighting for this title, and he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, I would love it if we beat them. Love it. There's a couple of fast blinks, and Kevin Keegan slowly, as his blood pressure begins to drop to normal again. Meanwhile, Alex Ferguson sits at home and pours himself another Sauvignon. Mission accomplished. Phil, I mean, Keegan, he's lost the plot at this stage, hasn't he? It's the football equivalent of watching a comic flailing on stage. It's painful to watch, but there's nothing you can do about it at this stage.
Yeah, it was like you say. I think Keegan is such a great player, a legend of the game, and I think he wore his heart on his sleeve, didn't he? On the pitch, that's the way he played, and that was his mentality. I think that he brought into his passion, brought into as a manager, and I thought he was a very good manager, a very good man manager. And obviously the same for England as well, but maybe he didn't have the qualities as a manager as far as like technical stuff or whatever, or putting it across to the players, or the way Fergie and the great successful managers, Arsene Wenger and people like that, who probably weren't in the same league as a player as someone like Keegan, but as far as manager goes, it's a totally different thing. And yeah, and like you say, it got to him at that point, the pressure, and it's understandable. It's human, you know.
We're going to go to your second game for your deserted island, a non-Premier League game you'd want to take with you. So this can be a league game, a cup game, even a game you've played in yourself. What would be the game that you would take to a deserted island that's a non-Premier League game?
Yeah, so this is a game I've played in, actually. It's a World Cup semi-final in 2017 in Sardinia. And it's England, party-sided team versus Russia. And Russia, we'd never beaten Russia before. I've never seen a team behave like them ever around the place, like in the athletes' village, as it were. They don't eat together. They don't speak together. They don't speak to each other. They don't socialise. Some of the lads come down, get dinner and take it up to the room. Some will sit on tables. It's so bizarre. I'm not sure if it's a culture thing or it's just that specific group of players. And they're just so aloof, and yeah, there's always questions about how legitimate they are as visually impaired athletes. There's always a lot of... So at the start of a tournament, you basically get taken to a hospital, and they fly in classifiers, so people who will test your vision to make sure that your vision's at a level where you're eligible to play in the sport. And I remember our whole team got classified in the space, and so the time it took for our whole team to get classified, one of their players still hadn't been classified in that time. Wow. And they'll bring in different people in to say, look at this guy. Is he legit? Is he not legit? And he was so unfazed. It was unbelievable. He was just like stony faced. They kept pushing him, and he was just not. He was like, no, I can't see. They kept putting him on different machines, and they're a good team, and they'd really beaten us the last time we played them, and they went 2-0 up in the game. Just kind of 2 breakaway goals. We're actually playing okay. And then we get one back before half time. Just after half time, our captain, Steve Daly, Steve is now the coach, Steve is. And he played for Glentoran and Northern Ireland Schoolboys before he lost his sight. He was like 38 at the time, and we'd convinced him to do one more. I always try and convince him. He's 47 now. I keep saying one more now, but he's like, no, I can't walk. And he scored in like a worldy goal, like dribbled past 3 players and like slapped it, like brilliant goal. Then it went to 3-2 England, 4-2 England. Then it went 4-3 England. We're just absolutely holding on by the skin of our teeth. I think they hit the post, hit the bar in like the last 30. Because in futsal, it's like basketball. If you've got possession with 15 seconds to go, you're in the game still. And our keeper's made an unbelievable save. It was just chaos. It was so stressful to play in. Yeah. And like the clock was going when you're chasing the game, the clock goes so quick. Then when you hold on to a lead, it just slows right down. But to get over the line it was amazing. And they were a bit gutted at the end, which they never show any emotion. And they were a bit gutted. And the other countries were watching, Spain were watching. People wanted us to beat Russia. Do you know what I mean? It was quite nice. We shared a coach back with Ireland, actually. Ireland had, but they'd gone out, but they came to watch. We shared a coach back to the hotel with Ireland, and we got on the coach. All the Irish lads were clapping us. And they hate England as well, so it was good. We'd done well. It was a great game. Yeah, really good.
That's incredible. And for you to get that England call up, and obviously it coming out of something that obviously must have been really difficult in terms of losing some of your sight. I mean, what's it like to sit in an England dressing room with an England shirt on to see that number lined up? How does that feel?
Yeah, it's great. It kind of, I suppose, because we haven't got. So say if you play for England's senior team, you play week in, week out for Tottenham. So you're exposed to that a bit more. Whereas when you first in our sport, when you first brought into the England setup, to see, you walk into the change room and your kit's hung up and you do the anthems, it can be overwhelming, and it takes you're just playing futsal. And you also just can't be happy to be there. A lot of people fall into that trap of, I'll get to wear the England shirt, or I'll get to wear the England tracksuit. It's actually not enough. We're actually trying to win. Do you know what I mean? So that's a bit of a pitfall that people fall into. The manager that called me up, Graham Keeley, he's changed my life forever, basically, this guy. Just how he approaches stuff, and to be about professionalism and looking after yourself. And, he's kind of taught me things that I'll take with me forever. It's definitely helped with comedy, actually, weirdly. Just about, sticking to practicing on the edge of your ability, and like reflecting on stuff and pushing yourself and working smart and all this stuff. Just really helpful stuff for life. And that's what sport is, isn't it, really? I suppose you've got kids, Carl, innit, that learn so much from sport.
100%.
Getting beat, losing, not being the best at something. It's great. It's great to be exposed to that.
Yeah, dealing with adversity and all of that. Yeah, 100%.
My little lad, he's 16 months, Carl. His first experience with football. He loves football. I've signed him up to a soccer school. Starts at 18 months. He's already on the bench. He's on a waiting list. He's been benched already.
Just it's all life experience.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So it's about how he deals with that now, though, Carl. Do you know what I mean?
So now we're going to go to the first match that you're going to take to your deserted island. It's a Premier League game featuring Barnsley. There are just the 38 to choose from. Is there one in particular that sticks with you?
Well, I was going to say the first game when we played West Ham and lost 2-1. But sadly, I wasn't there because we booked this holiday cottage in a place called Copdock near Ipswich. And my wife insisted that we went. The lady at the cottage had baked us a cake with all our names on. The cake was like a red and white cake. And I thought, I don't want a cake. I want to be at the match. The match I will choose, it seems counterintuitive, but I will. It was the third match of the season because we lost to West Ham. We beat Crystal Palace 1-0. Redfern scored. And they were all going, this Premier League, it's not that hard. Next game, we played Chelsea. It was on the telly. And my eldest daughter, who's 40 now, she was sick before the game. I said, don't you want to come? She went, no, I'm just that excited. We were so excited. I've never been so excited before a match as that. You go into town on the bus and there's people stood in the gardens waving to you, going, come on. And you get there and we have a samba band, council samba band, the front town band, and they were playing and they went and they think, this is great. This is exactly what you want. In those days, as you know, there was no seating in the away stand, so all the Chelsea fans stood there. And then, bloke behind me, an eternal optimist called John, who comes down every week from Newcastle to watch the match, goes, do you know, I think it'll be 0-0. And I go, do you know, I think it will. I think it'll be 0-0. And then, goodness gracious, I mean, as you know, we lost 6-0. Vialli scored 4. But then, on the other hand, it seems a daft game to choose because you could choose games that we won, but just the sheer excitement of being there and thinking, this is what it's like in the Premier League. We've got to play better than this. But at the same time, watching amazing football, we're gonna win 7-6 as we all sang ridiculously. And then you lost, and then this bloke behind me goes, it weren't 0-0, but then it didn't matter at the end of that game. People were embracing each other, going, well, And then the other game I should have chosen was that game against Liverpool, where we had 3 people sent off.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Gary Willard, this referee, every so often one of our team got sent off. So they sent off Chris Morgan for brushing against, very gently, Michael Owen. After 3 had been sent off, this bloke next to me, who never said a word, he goes, I'm going to get that referee. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. And he got up, big fella, about 25 stone, jumped. I never seen him move. I always thought he never moved between games, thought he was always there. He jumped on the wall, ran across to attack Gary Willard. And then Jan Ager Fjortoft, again a very slow player, ran faster than I've ever seen Jan Ager Fjortoft run before, tackled this bloke. He collapsed, the ground shook. And then Gary Willard, in his infinite wisdom, the referee, took both teams off without telling the managers. So then we're going, well, what happens now? What happens next? They started again. We managed to score with 8 men. Christoph scored. And then we kept playing attacking football. McManaman scored. And came and celebrated in front of Barnsley fans. Mistake. It was like one of those moments when, men land on the moon. Or Kennedy gets assassinated. You think, where was I when that happened? And as you're going down, you saw these conspiracy theories bubbling up. People going, well, that's it. They don't want us in Premier League. We're done. We'll never win another match. That's it. They were just, both those games were like games that, they weren't like dull 0-0 draws. They weren't like a game where you win 1-0. They were just apocalyptically exciting games. I thought, blimey, this is what sport is in a way, or what life is. It's just these things when things go tragically wrong. I can't stop laughing when I think about that game, because when you were there, you think, and the kids are going, what's happening, Dad? And I go, I've got no idea, and neither has anybody else. Oh, geez.
And the contrast between those two matches, because they're great picks, but actually after that Chelsea game, and that's still been so fun in your memory, that excitement, because it was so exciting that
it was it was on Sky, of course, wasn't it? It was on Sky. Yeah,
the multimillionaires, these world superstars coming to Oakwell, but so that carnival atmosphere, did that remain still walking out the ground after a 6-0 defeat?
It did, because you're going in this town that, as you know, has had such a kicking over the years. Here it is in the Premier League. Couldn't believe it. That game when we beat Bradford City, a bloke next to me, it happened twice. I wonder if it was the same fella. I often think about this. He kind of went to his knees and started shouting, "Me dad!" because his dad had taken him to games and couldn't take him anymore. And then, decades later, when we're at Wembley, in the final of the Johnson's Paint Trophy against Oxford, this bloke next to me went, "Hey up, Ian. I used to sit next to you," and I didn't recognise him. And he says, "Look, if we win, I might get a bit emotional." I said, it's all right. And then when we won, he did that Barnsley embrace, where he hardly touches you, like pats your back. But then he did it again. He went down his knees going, "Me dad." He started banging the floor. And I says, "Have we been?" Oh, my God. And he's hitting the ground. "Me dad."
Before we do finally let you go, we're going to have a quick round of Play Your Apps right now. This is the game we've been playing on this show. We're going to start you off with a familiar former player, and you're going to have to guess the number of Premier League appearances they've made. Now, this is Premier League appearances as per the PremierLeague.com website. I'll then give you another player, and you need to tell me if that second player has made more or fewer appearances in a higher or lower format. Whoever's in charge at the end of the board after 11 players is our winner, and it does tend to get a little bit harder as we go along. Our first player, and we're going to come to you first, Chris. You're both going to guess this. For what number of Premier League appearances, according to PremierLeague.com, does Ian Holloway have? Let's start with you, Chris.
Ooh. What, as a manager?
As a player.
Or a player? Oh, I'm going to go with 35.
35. What are you going with, Nathan?
I think it was a single season too, so that's quite annoying. It was more teams back then, so I'll say 42.
42.
Wait, no. Yeah, 42, yeah.
42 against 38. It's actually 107.
Wow.
He all made for QPR between 1992 and 1996. Which, Nathan, that gives you control of the board. Do you want to take us away, or do you want to pass it over to Chris and see
I
how
think
he
it's
gets on?
easier to go second, but in the interest of fairness, I'll go first.
Okay, all right. So Ian Holloway's.
Well, that's a noble choice, and should we reverse at any point, I will offer you the same courtesy.
The winner of this gets a free drink.
Love
Deal,
it.
deal.
There is something at stake. So, he's our next player. higher or lower in Premier League appearances than Ian Holloway's 107? Our next player is Seamus Coleman.
Oh, higher.
Higher is correct. 329 at the beginning of 22-23, with his breakthrough campaign coming in 10-11 in the Premier League, following that loan spell at Bloomfield Road in your promotion season. Our next player is James Beattie. Is he higher or lower than Seamus Coleman's 329?
He's higher.
Higher. It is higher. 331 appearances, the final 9 of which came in a tangerine shirt via Blackburn, Southampton, Everton and Stoke. He scored 91 Premier League goals, but none for Blackpool.
Yeah.
None for Blackpool. So you still retain control of the board, Nathan. Our next player is Brett Emerton. Is Brett Emerton higher or lower than James Beattie?
Did he play for Wigan? If it's who I think it is, how many's... I'm going to say lower.
It is lower. 247 appearances. He appeared in 9 consecutive Premier League seasons for Blackburn between 03-04 and 11-12. So you retain control of the board, Nathan.
I can do this all day.
This is it. I mean, Chris could come in right at the end. Our next player is Jermaine Defoe. Higher or lower?
Higher.
It is. It's 496.
Yeah. The thing is, I think I would have got all of these.
So Jermaine Defoe is higher than Brett Emerton, 496. The first being in 2000-2001 for West Ham, the last at Bournemouth in 2018-19. He joined the 100 club in the intervening years with 2 spells at Spurs, 2 at Portsmouth and also Sunderland. So Jermaine Defoe's 496 is our next player, higher or lower. Sol Campbell.
Long career, but he went down to 496, you say?
Mm-hmm.
So we're 38 times, 10 years. He can't, he's got... Oh. I'm going to higher. This is a bit mental, but I'm going to go higher.
You are correct to go higher. 503 appearances across the first 19 Premier League seasons for Spurs, Arsenal, Portsmouth and Newcastle.
If only I was as good at anything else in life as I am at this game.
Our next player after Sol Campbell's 503 is Kevin Campbell.
Oh, this is before my time. They probably played for about 20 years back then. I'll go lower, though.
It is lower, 325 Premier League appearances. He scored in 14 of the first 15 Premier League seasons for Arsenal, Forest, Everton and West Brom. Has 83 Premier League goals to his name. You are 4 from the end, Nathan. This could be our first ever clean sweep at this stage. So Kevin Campbell's 325 appearances.
I'm so nervous already.
Our next player is DJ Campbell. Is he higher or lower than Kevin Campbell's 325 appearances?
Lower. He was lower.
It is lower, 53 for Birmingham, Blackpool and QPR. Is our next player higher or lower than 53 appearances? Ian Evatt.
Oh, come on.
Lower, he only played 1 season.
Yes, he did.
Lower, 42 appearances. Before being an ever-present for Blackpool, he made 4 appearances for Derby County in the early 2000s.
Do you know what this is like? This is like going up to the Snooker World Championships and breaking against Ronnie O'Sullivan. That's what this feels like.
Just sat watching a 147 happening.
I'm off. I'm done.
You are 2 from the end, Nathan. Not to forget, just to clarify the rules, that if Nathan gets this wrong on the very final one, you do win by default, Chris. So that pint is still on. Ian Evatt's 42 appearances. Is our next player higher or lower? Brett Ormerod.
That's interesting because he played for Southampton before Blackpool, but he didn't play that long. And he didn't get many appearances for Blackpool. He came off a bench a few times. I'm going to go higher.
It is higher. 99 appearances.
99? Okay, played for more.
80 of those came for Southampton between 2001 and 2005. He added a further 19 appearances on his return to Blackpool, mostly from the bench, scoring against Spurs. Chris, you have
Carl, if this next one's Wayne Rooney, I am going to come over there and kick your ass. You understand that, right?
You now have to sit and watch the final black, Chris, as Nathan steps up to the table. Brett Ormerod's 99 appearances. Our final player. Is he higher or lower? Andy Reid.
Oh. That is higher, and I will take my beer. Thank you very much, Chris.
You would have gone higher as well, Chris?
Of course he's higher. I would have gone every single one of the night.
Andy Reid is higher. 115 appearances. He's only got 16 more Premier League appearances than Brett
Do you know
Holbrook.
what? That does surprise me, actually. I'd have thought it was higher than that.
That is a shock. I think you should apologise to Carl, Chris.
Never. Never apologise. Never explain.
The one thing we've ascertained on this show is that Chris is not apologising to any Carls for the rest of his life. He's had his fill of Carls.